on time, so there's several here that will be heading home, so we want to try to get out of here in a timely manner. So some of the committee members have joined us, not from this location, so when you hear your name called during roll call, just let us know where you are at. And just remember, if you're listening online, to mute your microphone and then unmute it if you'd like to speak. For legislative committee members, if I've already gone over that, I apologize. So at this point, I think we've covered all of our preemptive things. If we could have a roll call.
Senator Harper Angel. Senator Nemes. Representative Heverin.
Present in the room.
Representative Kulkarni. Tom Crawford.
Present here in my office.
Thank you. Co-Chair Mills.
Here in the room.
Co-Chair Bridges.
Very good. Senator Harper Angel, are you there? We'll give her a chance to. We show her on there online.
Mr. Chairman, I am here.
Yes.
Present remotely in my home office.
Very good. Good to have you. Okay.
Thank you.
We have 4 groups that are going to present today. And first on our agenda, we're going to mix our agenda up a little bit, but we're going to go with Ms. Holt first from the Department of Revenue, Kim Holt. And Ms. Holt, if you could, I saw your presentation looked fairly short. If you could try to cover everything in about 10 minutes or so, that would be great. Okay, you might want to unmute yourself. We're still not hearing you.
Okay, maybe now.
There you go. Very good. Take off.
Okay. Okay, I think you already have the PowerPoint. I can't see it, so I'm going to go ahead and say that we should go ahead and cover the slide with PVA office revenues. Some of this might be information that has been presented before, but I just wanted to go ahead and start with the revenues before we really started talking about expenses. The bulk of the PVA money is generated from the general fund appropriations. For example, this year, the general fund appropriations was $56.4 million. They also receive money from their county appropriations, and that's governed by KRS 132-590 and subsections 9 and 10. Each year after each county is certified, we notify them that, or notify the county how much money that should be appropriated to the PVA. And usually that letter comes from our office and we send it straight to the county judge executive. They also get money appropriated to them from city appropriations, and that's also covered in KRS 132-285. After that, they also have some miscellaneous income that they can bring in. The miscellaneous income could be from interest income, it could be from income from printing tax bills, or even fee schedule income, I think would be the bulk of their miscellaneous income. That covers all of their revenue for each year. We can go to the next slide. Okay. This slide covers the majority of what the PVA would spend their money on. Even though they do receive general fund appropriations, that's not enough to cover all of their personnel costs for the year. So they have what we call deputy hire billing, or we've also heard it referred to as shortfall billing. And that's money that we have to bill the PVA office, and it's sent back to our office to offset the cost, the money that we don't get from the general fund. This year we had to bill out 64% of the income that was generated by the PVA office to come back to us. On top of that billing, we also have billings. Probably about 90 PVAs have additional salary billings. And this is billings from where they either had to hire another employee that they weren't budgeted to hire, sometimes the PVA might need to give employee raises. So we would have to, we don't have the general fund money to cover that, so we build that cost back to the county also. Like I said, this year it was 64% of the income. That came out to about $8.5 million that we billed. And then the additional salaries, we anticipated to be around 1.8 million. So to do the math there, that tells you that roughly $10.3 million of their income will come back to Frankfurt just to cover their salaries and their deputies. Some other things that they have to spend their money on is normal operating expenses for their offices. I would say like computer services would be a big one. They also have to pay for their computer software and hardware. Aerial photography is a big expense for them. Just other routine office expenses such as furniture, office supplies, advertising, postage, educational expenses, equipment leases, professional contractual services. That's one that we're hearing from the PVAs could be an even bigger expense in the future. But that's just a sample of some of the expenses they have, probably what I would consider the more costly expenses for their office anyway. Okay, next slide. Okay, the PVA expense allowance. KRS 132-597, it allows for the PVA to receive $3,600 per year. It comes out to $300 per month. And unfortunately, for the last few years, it's been superseded by the enacted budget bill. So they're only receiving $200 per month. And obviously that comes out to $2,400 per year. In order to receive that, they have to have received a minimum of 30 hours of classroom professional instruction. And if they already have received their SK designation, then they only need 15 hours. Next slide, please. Okay, I was also asked to cover the PVA deputy classification systems. Parts of it's really simple, other parts of it's a little more complicated, but they do follow the state salary schedule, and that salary schedule was last updated June 1st of 2019. They're also allowed to have one deputy. We assign what's called a county grade. They're allowed to have one deputy that's one grade below that county grade, and that's typically their chief deputy. All other grades under the chief deputy was kind of locked in back in 2009 when we started having budget trouble. They kind of froze those grades to what they were right then. I know that's a little confusing. So if we go to the next slide, I've kind of given a little bit of an example of what that might look like for a particular county. I don't know if everybody can see it. It's kind of small on my end, but you can see that we do have at the employee number 6 is a grade 14, and that is the chief deputy. And then everybody else has to stay below that grade. We have 2 or 3 grade 8s and some grade 9 and grade 11. Those grades were frozen and in place like that in 2009. And the only way for a PVA to go above that as far as salary is concerned was to pay with their local funds. That was that additional salary billing that I mentioned earlier. So if you look at employee number 1, who's a grade 8, they're making roughly $22,000 per year. It's kind of really hard for the PVAs to maintain employment, and they probably get a pretty big turnover. So they will oftentimes try to bump those salaries up for their employees. But basically the way things are in the PVA office right now, those grades are locked in to where that grade 8 is pretty much permanent for right now. There's no way to actually move them to a grade 10 unless somebody actually retires or they do a vacancy promotion. So you can see at the bottom of this little spreadsheet, it shows how many employees we're actually billing a portion of their salary. So, and we do have about 90 counties that have opted to try to give their employees a little bit of money in order to retain good work. And I do believe that was my last slide. So I sped through that way faster than 10 minutes.
Well, very good. If you can hang on here, the next gentleman we're going to have Mr. Andrew Powell come up and He's the local PVA in my hometown, Henderson, and then we'll do questions afterwards, so y'all might get some of the similar questions. But thank you so much, Ms. Holt, for presenting that, and just hang on for some questions. We'll let Andrew walk up here and get settled. One thing I did miss before we got started, I forgot to approve the minutes from last meeting. So has everybody had a chance to take a look at those? Okay, do we have a second? Okay, Representative Haven. All in favor, say aye. Minutes are approved. Thank you. All right. So Mr. Andrew Powell is here. We got about 20 minutes for you to burn through your presentation, and we're thankful that you came up from Henderson. So.
Absolutely.
Thank
Can
you.
you hear me okay if I leave my mask on? I know other people are going to be sitting in this seat.
Yeah, you're fine.
Is that okay?
Perfect.
All right. Well, thank you very much. I appreciate Senator Mills and this committee for the opportunity to speak to you today. I also want to thank you for your willingness to serve on this task force. As a state office that's completely out of Frankfort except for the Franklin County office, we appreciate your attention to the needs of our endeavors. We always want to start with the PVAs as to what we do. We don't want to undercut that opportunity. So just quickly run through what a PVA office does. We assess across the Commonwealth 2.2 million real estate parcels, 130,000 tangible property returns, 5 million motor vehicles, boats, campers, and planes, and almost 500,000 homestead and disability exemptions, which is the exemption you get off your assessment once you reach the age of 65 or have a government-approved disability. We also have to map and sketch every property in the Commonwealth. So of that 2.2 million, there's a parcel layer, a picture, and a sketch of every improvement in the Commonwealth of Kentucky. Now, when you get into the farms, we may not have a sketch of every grain bin, but every home there is a sketch of. And you can see this is a parcel in my county on the Ohio River. You see the overhead map, the frontal picture we took in 2018, and then the sketch measurements of that home. I can move a little quickly because Kim did such a good job on behalf of Department of Revenue talking about how we're funded. I do want to make sure to always iterate that $56.4 million is payroll only. That doesn't buy paper clips, it doesn't buy Post-its, it doesn't postage. That's payroll only. We get no funding from Frankfort or the Commonwealth except for to pay our staff. Local allocation funds, statutorily, as Kim said, that's county and city allocations based on the size of the tax roll. And we get about 11.6 million from our cities and counties. We also talked about miscellaneous funding. These are, and we'll talk about this a little bit later, we talked about shortfall earlier with Kim. We have to create our own funding scheme to pay the rest of that payroll, to buy that postage, to pay for all that stuff. So we sell our tax roll file, we sell parcel information. I believe every county has a website, and I sell subscriptions to our information. Actually, I have to plug my website, hendersoncopva.com. We just updated it this week, and we're real proud of it. And we also sell map imagery for all that. Just to show you a little bit about this slide is just payroll. If you look at the 56.4 that Kim mentioned, it covers about 83.5% of our payroll needs, and this is to reach just the funding situation we're in right now. The staff we have, the deputies we have, we still have to come up with $11.25 million just to make our payroll. Again, no fuel for our cars to go look at houses, none of that. This is just payroll. Now, we talked about 11.6 from our cities and counties. When we give, what we have here is 73% of that is going towards paying our staff. So then we're theoretically only left with 3.1 statutorily. And I want to point out, everything we do is by statute. You know, we don't do, we look at every property once every 4 years because that's the statute. So we have to have a vehicle that gets us out there. Got to pay insurance on that vehicle, have to pay fuel on that vehicle, have to change the oil on that vehicle, have to replace the tires when they need it. Also, aerial imagery. By statute, we have to keep maps of our county, but we've got to pay for that flyover imagery to be done. And we're left with only 26.7% of our local allocation, which statutorily is supposed to go to pay for those things, because the vast majority is going towards paying for payroll. Just a little bit to show what you get in return for that $56 million. $11 of every dollar you send to the PVA office, or every $1 you send to the PVA office, $11 come back to the general fund. If you look at the left, the ROI, roughly $600 million comes back to the general fund from PVAs for the state budget. $2.6 billion goes to the local government entities. To an overall $3.2 billion in revenue is generated by PVA offices every year, with a total. And if you look over there at the right, that's a $48 return on every dollar spent on PVA office. And I would love to invest in a company like that, honestly. But the on the right-hand screen there, or right-hand bar graph, the one in the middle is probably what needs to be approached the most. Almost $250 come back for every $1 spent at the local level. And again, the local allocation is what we're talking about, the city and the county allocations. Now, I was given some very specific bullet points to talk about, so we want to make sure that we talk about everything. Office expenses in a PVA office is different. Jefferson County is obviously different from Henderson County, is different from McCracken County. I grew up in Marshall County, which is different from the other 119. So statewide, 11.2 of our office expenses, money that we have somewhat control over, that 11.25 immediately goes towards paying our payroll. Now, Kim also talked about a 1.5 million. Our salary scale follows the state scale, but we're locked into grades 11 years old now. So for me to retain a staff, I'm a completely grade 11 across the board. My staff, every single person makes $30,000 a year roughly. And I can't retain good, competent, hardworking people at that level for very long. I trained them a specific skill, and then they could go to the private sector and make more money. So we offer my chief deputy gets a certain increase. I have a chief field worker. So that 1.5 million goes towards retention of well-qualified, hardworking Kentuckians. Now, talk about other expensive aerial imagery. We talk about our map that we have of our entire county. Henderson County had a flyover at the cost of $46,000 2 years ago. We replaced computers this year in response to COVID-19, cost us just over $12,000. I have to pay an annual license for our assessment software, my sketching software, my mapping software, and also we have to pay for an emulator, which the state, for us to tap into the state system for our cars and motor vehicle assessments. Also, there's, again, all this is statutory. I have to put a statutory notice in the mail when we send out open inspection and when we're going to send out assessment increases. I have to pay for a printer. I've got 2 vehicles to cover just over 21,000 parcels, which I have to buy, maintain, insure, and purchase the fuel for. Travel, we have a 30 or 40-hour requirement for us to do professional continuing education. That all comes out of local funds. I send just over 4,000 assessment notices. By statute, I have to send them first-class mail every single year. So I'm sending 4,000 pieces, at least 4,000 pieces of mail just one day, which comes up. I've got to print that, stuff those, and pay for the postage for those. We spend over $3,000 in postage every year just because of our statutory mandates. Other things here, and Kim talked about it briefly, professional appraisal services. We're on the verge, we truly feel, because we were hit hard by it this year, that a lot of our big corporate entities are going to start appealing their assessments. And we don't have the power or the funding to fight that without professional appraisal services. If they show up with a professional appraisal and we don't have one, we're going to lose. And that's going to significantly cut into our assessment levels. And the problem with that is, I feel as a PVA that I must, on behalf of my constituents, fight that, because if that comes out of a big box store or something like that, that tax rate is just going to be shared with our residential homeowners, and we can't allow that to happen. So I think that contracted services, that's going to go through the roof. I really do believe that's coming, because it's hit Michigan hard, it's hit Indiana hard. I feel like it's definitely coming towards us. And then again, I pay for our website to be updated and held currently. The expense allowance, Kim talked about that. The budget bill has superseded the statute, so to $2,400 annually. That saves about $144,000 a year on the state budget. The salary scale, we talked about that. We haven't changed our grade since 2009, and we're falling further behind. Now, we are using the state salary bracket and scale, but when we're locked into grades, our counties are just not able to keep up. We also imposed a 90-day hiring freeze as a cost-saving measure. I don't know if Kim mentioned that in her report, but if we have somebody leave, we cannot replace them for 90 days unless we pay for it out of our local funds. PVA Longevity, that was one of the things that I saw a bullet that I thought this information was interesting. You got almost 1,300 years of experience in your PVAs across the Commonwealth right now. But you break that over 120 counties, really the average PVA is only halfway through their third term. We only have 5 PVAs that are approaching retirement ability just as a PVA, having served 25 years or greater. We've had 3 new PVAs be appointed this year, 2 by retirement, 1 by an unfortunate death. And so I will say that 1298 is a rounding. We had a PVA appointed in August, and he's, according to those numbers, he's given a year's credit. So you could probably knock that down a couple years. So almost half of our PVAs, 51 PVAs, are in their first 2 terms, including me. We also have 592 allocated, or that's actually a typo, it's 598 and a half allocated deputies, but we don't fill anywhere near that because we can't afford to pay them. Our shortfall bill would be through the roof if we filled all of these positions. 38 positions have, since 2009, have been absorbed, and we can't fill those anymore. Let's see here. Budget issues, just to reiterate what we've been talking about, state allocation does not fully fund. We're about 16.5% short, which leaves 73% of our county and city allocation going toward just paying payroll. We only have 25% of our local allocation to pay for all those things we talked about previously. Now, the miscellaneous income is under attack. One thing you may not be aware, we've got 6 PVAs that are named defendants in a lawsuit right now, claiming that an entity should not have to pay for our tax roll. And let me just say this, if we are not successful in defending that lawsuit, all of our miscellaneous income dries up. It goes away completely. And that accounts for about $23,000 a year in my county alone. I won't be able to survive if I lose that money, or if it doesn't come from somewhere else. And just a couple other things. Right now, we sell data to these big companies. We tell them they enter into an agreement to not resell our information, but they do. We don't have the budget to sue these companies to fight for that lost income. Also, same thing with our aerial imagery. Companies will buy our overhead imagery for a fee and then resell it, despite our contract saying otherwise. So our miscellaneous income is extremely in flux right now, and we can't discount that, especially given that lawsuit. Some of that could dry up, and we would be in an awful position. Just to show what we've been doing to these fundings, and we've talked about this before, there's 38 positions that have been eliminated. saves about $1.5 million a year. We've got a 90-day hiring freeze that we talked about, saves $650,000 a year. There's $8.5 million sent to local from our local allocation. Does that mean my 20 minutes is paused?
Welcome to Blue Jeans. To connect to the meeting using your remote control, if you're the moderator, enter your moderator.
Okay, hopefully everybody online can hear us again. We lost our internet connection, and we've paused Mr. Powell, so you hadn't missed anything. So we'll let Andrew start back up on the PVA response to funding shortage. Go ahead.
Thank you, Senator. So we've talked about most of these things. And to talk about, we said there's that, what was it, 598 positions. We currently have almost 90 of them. As of last year, we had 90 positions not being filled because we couldn't afford to pay them out of our local funds. And so we never want to come to you and just ask for more money. We never want to show that, A, we're not doing everything we can, and B, we don't have useful options for us to explore. Now, we've always talked about a budget allocation. If we were to, the state government state rate for real estate has been 12.2 for the last few years. In the 70s, it was in the 30 cents. Now it's 12.2. If we could, A, either allocate a certain number, 3 cents, just to PVAs, pay PVAs what they bring in, that would bring us to full funding. But we understand that nobody's in the business of raising taxes right now, especially given what's on the horizon. Now, we also talked about, so that's property tax pay for property tax, that's the 3 cents. Add an administrative fee. The sheriff gets paid for collecting taxes, but the PVA doesn't get anything off the tax bills. But one of the options that we want to talk about most today, and I guess that's been telegraphed because of the people succeeding me in presenting, is if you were to break down Henderson County's tax bill by percentage, this is what you're looking at. The two entities that pay anything for our work make up less than 25% of that tax bill. The state, if the left side is even worse because that includes our city, but the right side is our county, one single bill. The state is only 11.47% and the county is only 12.03%. It's almost exactly it is exactly 25 cents on a $1.06 tax rate. So it's 24% of the total bill are footing all of are paying for our staff, paying for anything really. So we've introduced the idea, and you'll hear the term SPGE, special. Am I saying that right? Special purpose was the word, government entity, but that doesn't include schools. So schools have their own taxing statute. So we do include schools in that situation. But if you look at this, if we were to charge a fee to the special SPGEs based on a percentage of their gross receipts, just at 6%, that's $125 million. I mean, think about how much money these SPGs are bringing in off of using the PVA tax roll. They're not paying anything for it. If 6%, just 6%, is $125 million. Now, the state and the cities and the counties both have a cap. So we've offered some caps. If we did 4% at 100%, at a $100,000 cap, it's still $24.7 million at just 4% of what they're currently getting, not paying anything for. Now, we understand that, nobody wants this certain pay, and we with the passage of Senate Bill 5, these SPGEs are going to have to get approval by their fiscal court to raise their rates. They can raise their rates despite what you may hear, but they've got to have a reason to, and their fiscal court has to approve that now, which I think was a good move by the General Assembly. Also, we also feel that you always hear that they don't even talk to the PVA. I don't have anything to do with the PVA. Well, that's by design. We are intended to be an autonomous office, so we're not influenced by these different groups. Our job is to objectively assess property, and then we hand it to the state, to the county, to the city, and through DOR to the SPGEs to determine what their rates are. We don't participate in that end of it by design, because that's the right thing to do. There's an objectivity that needs to happen in our office that separates us from that. Last bullet that I was asked to touch on was fee charge for services, and we talked about how that could all go away through these lawsuits. We charge for copies of your assessment cards. We usually give it for free if you own the property. It's your information. We'll give it to you. We charge for maps of properties. People want to know where their property lines are, and while we're not official property lines, we try to be accurate, so we try to help people out. We sell our annual tax files. We sell GIS and polygon layers to entities, and then of course website subscriptions. Some counties don't charge for their website. Most counties do because we have to. We've got to generate those funds. So I believe that's all of mine. I flew through it because I don't want to take any more of this committee's time. But I'm happy to answer any questions you may have.
Questions from Representative Bridges first.
First off, I want to thank you for coming and presenting before us today. I do have a couple of questions, Mr. Chair, if I may. The couple of things you mentioned, you alluded to what I'm assuming is the dark property appraisals that the big commercial industries want to use. Do you have a suggestion on how we can resolve that?
Absolutely. I think the problem is the Constitution in Section 172 says that all property is going to be taxed at 100% fair cash value. Now, statutorily, the PVA office was created and tells us how to do that. There needs to be some inclusion, and we would love to have any member of this task force work with you to draft a bill for the next session regarding using properties at their current and best use value. There's no type of assessing or appraisal industry that doesn't take property at its highest and best use. However, all of these big corporate entities are coming at us with empty sales. And that's not its highest and best use. But when you live in a small county like Henderson, or even, I'm considered a medium-sized county, they don't have those. They don't have comparable sales. That happened. Bill and I both had a same company appeal, or Mr. Dunn and I both had the same company appeal this year, and we didn't have good comparable sales. Now, we both succeeded at the local level, but I'm sure that it's yet to be seen whether they'll appeal to the next.
Being a residential and commercial realtor and broker, I understand that, and I think there are some changes that could be made, some wordage used that would prevent that from happening and take you out of the hot spot.
Would love to have that help.
So, okay, Mr. Sheriff, thank you. The special government entities, do you have any kind of estimation if there were, let me preempt this, not saying you're not doing your job, but you're not allowed financially and conditionally to do your job to the fullest because of the limitations of what you have. So with that in perspective, not making any bad accusations against the PVAs, but, the underfunding, the lack of enough help, all across the board, what we've been looking at, you guys are struggling. If the funds were available so you could do your job at 100%, and we perhaps looked at the special taxing districts to help fund that, what do you think that, would there be an increase in revenue due to that? And do you think that would be possibly enough to offset what they're going to see as far as their cost investment of that?
Well, I think that's absolutely right. That's the perfect line of thinking. The better our assessments get, the more the tax roll goes up, and the burden of that fee goes down because there's more money in the roll. So I think you're absolutely right. I'm not a the sky is falling kind of person, but when you're trying to do some of your work with your one hand tied behind your back, you can do. If I could fill my office completely, we wouldn't be rushing to do our quad report every year. And the better assessment we have is only going to help the tax roll, which is only going to increase revenue for everybody across the board.
Sir, go ahead.
Thank you. One other thing, and you haven't mentioned this, but others have, looking at the aerials, the GIS, the software, all of that. Do you see any savings that could be obtained through that? We've looked at where funding could come from other places, but I know we've got a state land office. We've got a state GIS system that flies actually it's been on a pretty regular basis annually, but this year I understand they're not. But they do not offer the layers that you have, or they don't do them now. But my understanding in discussions with them, they can be added very simple, and get you the HD and the things that you need. Do you see that there might be a cost savings rather than 120 counties going out and getting 120 contracts and dealing with 120 possible different entities? And we're already doing it once. We're duplicating that as a state on a state level. Do you? I mean, I use that as an example, but do you see any savings, cost-effective suggestions
I hope so.
that we might look at?
I absolutely hope so. Now, I will take a pause and say that this is me speaking for my office. I don't necessarily represent the other 119 PVAs, but I'm a big believer that the bigger buyer gets the better deal. But so far, what's been offered to us by state GIS has not met our needs. What it amounts to, and I won't flood you with information about aerial imagery, but the pixelation, I guess, is the easy way to break it down for you. How closely and how clear it is for my office to get useful information from these images, it's not what we're being offered currently. Now, I'm happy to engage with state GIS and Mike Tackett and everybody in those offices and COT to try to work something out. But right now, what's been offered, I want to explore it. Yes, absolutely. I think we can cut costs and save everybody a bunch of money and get it more often because I can't afford it as regularly as I like. Problem with aerial GIS is as soon as it's flown, it's obsolete because a new building's built and it's not on your map.
Representative Bridges has one more question.
I'm sorry, but as you can tell, this is sort of part of affiliated with my profession, and it is something I understand and it excites me. But the other question is we have statutes and regulations, different things, to where you have to physically go out to the property every 4 years and assess that property. With new technology, and if we could get the 3D imaging, the high definition, the high pixel, and all that, do you see circumstances to where you could assess a property from your desk and know that there has not been enough to the point to see that there's not significant changes to that property to where you would not have to physically go out to every property every year and maybe do that every you know, every other time or something. Just, I'm looking at some cost savings. And then my thing it gets me is accessibility to farms. If the gate's locked, you can't get on it, you know, but you can see from the GIS, there's a new chicken farm or building or whatever. There's a new improvement structure of some type. You know, how could we, I guess it's two questions. I'm sorry, Senator Mills. But, you know, one, could the GIS help us to help save you time and effort? And the other thing, on property that's inaccessible, or do you have any suggestions on how we can make it easier for you to access that property when it is needed?
Absolutely, and sort of a twofold response to a twofold question. The aerial imagery now offers, and you're alluding to it, what they call change finder, which you take your old aerial imagery and your new aerial imagery, and it shows you the differences. So you know when there's a new structure, you know, you don't have to fine tooth comb the so many hundred square miles your county is to look at it, which is great for structural changes. It doesn't quite get us there, no matter what the resolution, vertical or oblique resolution is. It doesn't quite get us there for condition. I mean, a house may look great if it's had a new roof in the last 3 years, but if we step up in front of it, pull up in front of it, and can see that the windows are broken out or the foundation is sagging, we're not quite there as far as the technology. I think visual in-person inspection still plays a role. I think technology is definitely helping us, and we're getting there. But I think they both still play a very positive, important aspect of what we do. Now, as far as, I agree with you, if especially out in Western Kentucky, if there's a gate locked, I tell my people not to try it because I don't want. There's no telling what they're going to find on the other end. But you know, there's been discussions about maybe we try to do some imagery with drones or something like that. I'm not. The lawyer in me says I'm not encroaching on somebody's property that's not specifically provided for by statute. But there is, yes, those are absolutely real. You know, you come up on a farm. See, I have the benefit of having planning and zoning in my county. So everything is permitted except for on big farms. Grain bins don't have to be permitted. A lot of counties don't have that. And so you're right, they're literally looking for new structures, whereas I'm just confirming and measuring them. And that's a tall task for a lot of PVAs across the state.
You done? Senator Nemus has a question.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Ms. Holt and Mr. Powell.
Hold on just a second.
Sure.
We lost our internet connection.
Is it my face? Am I too ugly?
I don't know.
Welcome to Blue Jeans. If you're the moderator, enter your
Think we got us? Okay, we're back online. Senator Nemus has a question.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman, Ms. Holt, and Mr. Jones. And I agree with Representative Bridges. It's hard to just ask a question when we're trying to discuss and fill out things that we need to do. But I will remind you, Representative, the drones, we do shoot them down in Bullitt County, so it might be hard.
Yeah, exactly.
So anyway, I have a few things I want to say and try to condense it. You talk about generating return on investment. First of all, your data is so important. It's very important to so many entities as you laid out to generate taxes. But that's not really generating money and a return on investment. So to put a percent on what you assess is kind of tough because most appraisal fees are not a percent, they're a fee. So what you really have here is a unfunded mandate. You're required by law to do all this, and you're not funded enough for that. And without some kind of legislation, your miscellaneous income that you do generate and some that you could generate, then you're not able to do that without certain legislation. That's what we're kind of looking at here. So that's pretty much what I'm saying is we really need your data. But as far as a return on investment, I think you should more go that this is the fees we need to continue to do our job. And then for Ms. Holt, I'd like for her to explain the state versus county on how your people are paid. I understand that the grades that you're stuck, the salaries aren't really froze. Your grade is froze, and the salary is froze because the grades each year they're supposed to get 3 to 5% increase, and each year it seems like the legislature, freezes that and doesn't do that. So that's how those grades are frozen in their salary, if I'm not mistaken. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Ms. Holt, do you have anything to add? Can you hear us? Okay,
No, he's correct. It is the grade that's frozen, not necessarily the salary.
okay, very good. And finally, Representative Heffernan has a question.
Thank you. My question actually goes to you from Henderson County. Thank you for coming today. We appreciate it. I'm from Grayson County. I represent Grayson and Hardin County, so I appreciate people from the Western District coming up here, making their way. My question is regards to software that the PVA offices use. I've sat down with both the Hardin County PVA and Grayson County PVA, and that's a discussion we've had. Previously to serving in the Kentucky General Assembly, I worked at the Kentucky State Treasury, where I was the Director of Unclaimed Property, and I worked with different states regarding software. And I was just curious, I think you had mentioned when Representative Bridges asked his question about the mapping that, sometimes you get a better deal to the best buyer, the bigger buyer. And so if all 120 counties use the same software, do you think that would be, well, tell me your thoughts on that.
Sure. Well, as far as the aerial imagery, the state, we can opt into the state's SRE account. Now, we do pay for it, but it's a much bigger buying option, and it is usually discounted. I don't have to do that because my county, as a group, has it, and it's slightly less of an expense for me. So yeah, I agree with that wholeheartedly. Now, as far as assessment software goes, there's maybe 10 right now. One of them was just purchased and is maybe on its way out. I'm not sure. The problem with it is it's such a cog in a bigger system. My software works with my county clerk, works with my sheriff, works with my county attorney. Now, by design, my software does not integrate with them, just because the county clerk and the sheriff and the county attorney don't need to be able to change anything about my software. If we had, and I'll say this, some PVAs love their software. I've tried other systems. Honestly, the price is what controls Henderson County. Bigger counties, David O'Neill in Fayette County, I'm pretty sure he designed his own. But he's got the manpower and the acuity to do that kind of thing. I think if there was a development for one software, it would be awful trying to get everybody on board. But at the same time, I can't discount the value in it either.
I started thinking about that after my conversations because there were probably 3 different softwares on the market for unclaimed property. And, each state decided what they did and, who could get the better deal. But then just because of uniform laws, we ended up, there's basically 1 or 2 softwares that most people began to use. And so I just wondered if that was similar among the 120 counties, if with the assessment software, if you all could combine, start using the same software to get a better deal to maybe make expenses cheaper on you all.
I'm not sure our vendors I'm sure our vendors would want the statewide contract. I'm not sure what that means to their bottom line.
Mhm.
Absolutely. Thank you for entertaining my question.
Very good. Well, Andrew, thank you so much, and if you can hang out here, we may have questions at the end, but we will let the next group come on up. And
Thank you all.
next up was going to be the public libraries from Kenton County and Oldham County. We have Mr. Dave Schroeder, Jessica Powell. Mr. Schroeder's from Kenton County up north, and Ms. Powell is from Oldham County right down the road. So thank y'all for being here, and just a reminder while you are getting settled, we are just taking information, and we want you guys, since y'all have been mentioned already today, to give your side of the story from the libraries, and you're kind of representing the libraries for us, but we will not make any decisions here, and it'll be into our legislative session before any decisions are made. But please take the next 12 or 15 minutes here to go through your presentation, and then we may have a few questions afterwards. So I'll let either of you start, and you can remove your mask if you'd like to talk. Thank you.
Thank you all for having us here. We're very appreciative of being able to address the committee, so thank you. As I said, my name is Dave Schroeder. I'm Director of the Kenton County Public Library and Chair of our Advocacy Committee. And Jessica Powell is the Director of the Oldham County Public Library and is our incoming Public Library Association President. So we are here today to talk to you a little bit about libraries. So if we go to the next slide, basically libraries that are SPGEs, most of us are SPGEs, not all of us. So there are outliers. Louisville and Lexington are not specifically SPGEs. So Kenton County, where I'm from, is the largest SPGE library. And then we have some smaller libraries that are not taxing districts, so they are not SPGEs. So it comes out to be about 112 or so of us that are SPGEs. Just to talk a little bit about how we're funded, we're almost entirely funded through property taxes. So what people pay on their property, their homes, their businesses, and their vehicles. We do not receive payroll taxes. We do not receive taxes on insurance, on any other utilities, et cetera. And so our tax rate is limited to property taxes. I will say, too, that as long as I've been around, and I've been around a long time, we have never asked for additional revenue from other taxing sources. So property taxes is what we have relied on and what we continue to rely on. Senate Bill 5 did limit SPGEs to the compensating rate. We can ask for more than that, but have to have fiscal court approval. Realistically, what that means for most SPGEs is that in this current economic situation, most fiscal courts are not going to approve higher than a compensating rate in most cases, is my opinion, just because of the economic situation we're in at this point. And all government entities are going to be struggling, and it's not going to get easier. It's going to get tougher in the next couple of years. Other libraries that are not SPGEs receive no funding whatsoever through the current measures that we're talking about. So how do we use PVA data is basically, we use it to set our tax rates. So the PVA sends evaluation to the revenue cabinet. Data is forwarded to the Department for Library and Archives. In our case, the Department for Library and Archives calculates the compensating rate and any other alternative rates. So that's all done through the Kentucky Department for Library and Archives in our case. We're not reliant on another party to do that for us. We set the tax rate, report it to the fiscal court. We notify the revenue cabinet and the county clerk. So in general, we really do not have a whole lot of contact with our PVAs. Sheriff, of course, sends out the bills. County clerk collects some of those taxes for us as well. We do pay a small fee to the county clerk and the sheriff for those two services they provide us. So that's very quickly how we operate. I just want to say that we do feel the pain of the PVAs. We understand their situation. We have been under financial constraints as well. I really appreciate our PVA in Kenton County. She has done an excellent job. They're very efficient. They're very effective. No problems with our PVAs, and I think if you would talk to any library director in the state, they would give you a similar answer. So this is not, we are not battling the PVAs. That's not our intent. That's not what we want. We're here to provide you with information and answer your questions. So some of the fiscal challenges that we are facing, I think, are very similar to what you've probably heard from lots of government groups. The first thing was state aid was eliminated for all libraries in this current, in the last session. So there is no direct money going to Kentucky Public Libraries at this point in the state of Kentucky. And many of our libraries, especially our smaller libraries in Eastern and Western Kentucky, were relying on that state aid significantly. If it does not change in the current session coming forward, we will see branches closing and we will see library districts in very difficult situations. There's at least 10 to 12 that are very reliant on state aid. Most of us are using state aid to either help us provide staffing or to buy materials. I know there are a number of libraries in Kentucky that are using their state aid entirely for it is their book budget. So you can imagine if they lose their state aid, they're losing their book budget. So it is a significant problem for many libraries in Kentucky. We are facing the same pension issues everyone else is. A lot of times I talk about pensions and I get incredulous looks back at me because people don't understand most public libraries are in the pension plan. We are part of the Kentucky retirement system. So we are facing the same challenges everyone else is in that regard. I heard our esteemed PVA from Henderson was talking about certification of his staff. By statute, our public library employees are certified. So all of my staff that work directly with the public and informational needs are certified by statute, meaning they have to do 20 hours a year, 100 hours worth of CE every 5 years to hold their jobs. So we are facing those costs as well and the increased cost of doing that. All the grant funding that used to come through KDLA over the years, that we would get technology grants, for instance, which helped a lot of our rural and poorer library districts provide technology. All of those in the last decade have dried up. There is no direct granting from KDLA, which used to exist. When I first became director, those grants were available. They are gone. KDLA's staff has been slashed like most state agencies have, and so the support we are getting from them has been reduced greatly. Rising healthcare costs, we're facing that as well. We are being asked to do more with internet and broadband services to our community, and I think that's important. We talked about salaries with the PVA. I can tell you in many public libraries across the state of Kentucky, our clerks, so our entry-level full-time staff are making somewhere in the mid-20s as a regular salary. So people are not entering the library field to become rich. They're entering the library field because they love our libraries, they love our mission, they love what we do. So we are certainly not in the position to pay significant salaries either. And also, I think the other issue that comes up a lot is multiple formats equal multiple costs. For years, we were asked to provide books, physical materials. Now we're being asked to provide electronic materials, so databases, ebooks. People think that we buy ebooks the way you buy an ebook. You may go online and buy the latest bestseller for $10 online. They will charge us as libraries $85 per copy, $45 per copy, sometimes if you're lucky. And we do not keep that item forever. Most of the publishers will only sell to libraries at a rate that is based on either so many checkouts, so many times it's 26 checkouts, and then the book disappears and we have to rebuy it. or it will be available for a year or 2 years and we have to rebuy it. Some of those we do not rebuy, but if there's a series, I'm reading a series right now that's 54 books long right now. I'm on number 55. For us to maintain that collection, we have to continue to rebuy those old books over and over and over again. This is totally out of our control. The publishers, the big 5 publishers have determined their cost structure. This is what they charge libraries. So not only are we paying for the paper, we're also paying for the electronic. So over the last 10 years, we've been hit very hard in trying to meet the needs of all of our patrons, regardless of how they want to get that technology or how they want to get those reading materials. So despite that, we're being asked to do more, and we've had constraints put on us, just like most other state agencies. And Jessica's going to talk to you a little bit about what we're doing now that we didn't do before.
Thank you all again for having us here today to talk about my favorite subject, public libraries. I'd just like to share with you, Dave has talked about our funding constraints that we are under. We, in the last 6 months, have reinvented how we serve our public. COVID has radically shifted how we think about every single thing that we do. Libraries have always supported the economy by online resume help, job applications. We've had wonderful partnerships with the Kentucky Career Centers because those have been eliminated locally. Libraries have absorbed a lot of that over time. Now that so many folks are out of work, libraries are critically important in putting Kentucky back to work after COVID. The lady in this photograph was actually the first patron through our doors when we reopened to the public at the end of June. She had been waiting all of that time to file her taxes because she was waiting on her stimulus check. She couldn't get her stimulus check without filing her taxes. She couldn't do it on her phone, and she was out of work as well. And to have her waiting there as soon as the doors opened to be able to use library computers, library internet, to take care of those things was critically important. The second person through our doors in the same day was a gentleman who actually drove from the next county over to use our computers to file for unemployment. He spoke English as a second language and struggled horribly with trying to use the unemployment website. So I spent 4 hours with him over the course of 2 days, helping him fill it out and provide all of his identity verification documents so that he could at least get that process started and try and get some support while he's looking for work actively again. We are also supporting educators and families learning at home. I know that you all know the words for NTI and VLA. They have thrown everybody in Kentucky for a loop and everybody in this country, and families need tons of support right now. They're working at home, they're teaching their kids as well. That's 2 full-time jobs. And our teachers are reinventing how they're delivering education all at the same time. Libraries have stepped up to the plate massively to support our families at home. We've always supported homeschool education, but now we've bought additional online products. Most libraries across the state, if they have the funding, we've redirected some of our budget for online tutoring. Not everybody can tutor their child in calculus at home. I know that I cannot tutor mine. Now we're using live online products like that to try and support families and fill in some of those gaps until we get back to a more normal educational cycle. All of those things cost lots of money. The libraries that have been fortunate enough to redirect some budgets, we can, but in other places, those services are just not available. Some of the hands-on learning at home activities that we've been working on, these might look like cute crafts, but libraries across the state have been doing take-home kits. 1, because a lot of families don't have the money to buy these things. 2, they don't have transportation to the store. They're not available in their area. Or 3, they just don't have the time to put together cute activities for their kids that are also educational. So just to show you, that little girl decorating that cookie there, what she's actually learning is the manual dexterity in her hands to be able to hold a pencil when she gets to kindergarten and 1st grade. That little boy planting a bean sprout, he's actually learning the foundations of scientific method and inquiry by watching it grow over time. The cuties on the right here with their little caterpillars, that might look like a cute cut and paste scissor activity, but the number of children that show up in kindergarten never having used scissors, their muscles in their hands cannot actually do it because we live in a digital society now, and that crosses every income bracket and demographic. Children are showing up at school without the basic fine motor skills necessary to begin learning effectively. And like I said, we've been evolving traditional library services. You can see here in these photos, this is a picture of one of our online interactive Zoom story times. Screen time is not actually good for young children unless it is interactive. And so many libraries have started. The kids can actually interact with Miss Shannon and sing songs with her while she's reading the story. The parents can still communicate with her. But all of those services take twice as long to do because now we're delivering them in a digital format, and suddenly overnight we've had to become YouTube stars and, you know, digital production managers to make all of this technology work. None of us had used Zoom when March 15th happened and everything closed down, much like I'm sure state government was not aware of how important these were going to be. So we're doing all of these things with the same budgets and often with fewer staff because unfortunately various counties across the state have had to furlough library staff because of budget concerns. We'll skip the outdoor community programs, but you can see here that our story times, getting kids out, getting families out to experience the community in a safe way during COVID while we're all still being very careful is incredibly important. Social isolation is taking a toll across age groups. Everybody's very worried about the kids not going back to school, but we're worried about our seniors and everybody else as well. So I think these are just some of the things that libraries across the state have come up with to bring people out and keep them engaged. These photos here, the ladies in the upper left putting together those sanitizer dispensers, they're doing that because they had to lay off their entire facilities and maintenance staff. And so those are the part-time folks jumping in, as always, to make the library work. Those bags on the right, that's 3,000 items that were waiting in our LaGrange location to be picked up when we reopened for drive-through service. So we know our people were hungry for new things to read after we reopened things. They're using their libraries every day.
That's really all we had to present. We wanted to make sure that you understood the constraints that we are under as well and what we're being asked to do in addition to what we've done in the past. We went from having no online programming to having a full session of programs ready in the next week. Again, that takes manpower, that takes money, that takes resources. So we have been very adept at moving around our resources and being as creative as possible with the staff that we have. And as Jessica said, you know, we're under the same constraints that most government entities are here in the Commonwealth. So,
any questions for our guests? Okay, Senator Nemus has a question.
First, I'd like to thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'd like to Mr. Schroeder and Ms. Powell for being here.
thank you.
And I worked when I was at the Education Cabinet with Terry Manuel.
Yeah, yeah.
So I understand, and not necessarily a question, I wanted to clarify some of what you're saying. First, I like, Dave, how you put the PVA task force to let us know of your woes, which they are, so, and how important. But something, it's very important for the state to help fund the small libraries because they need that. And there's 3 or 4 ways that we do that. One is construction loans.
Correct.
Backing those construction loans.
Absolutely.
And what the A&R committee, which I'm on, and of course, we didn't have a lot of time to do things, and that I was explaining to the libraries because they kept saying, Bullitt County, where I'm from, Jefferson County, are sitting on a lot of cash. They're not really sitting on it, they're using it for construction. But in the small counties, they don't have the base, the property tax base, to be able to do things. And you are correct, those libraries out in where they're, I'm not going to say most needed because they're needed everywhere, they're going to go under because they don't have the property tax base and we're not supplying the state funds that we were or the backing from the KDLA. So that's something that is, I wanted to make that point. You're no longer not just books. I even have my wife says, well, why do we need libraries anymore? We just get online or this, that, and other. Y'all are doing a great job of transitioning into things. It's a bad kept secret or a best kept secret, a secret that shouldn't be.
Yeah.
How's that? And what you all are, and I worked very hard with the registered apprenticeship and things where you're talking about the career centers to be able to combine the libraries, because when I first started, we went to the libraries and they said they had training for and all their training was like Microsoft and computers. And now we're trying to get into where you will help train with even welding and things like that, where not the actual welding in the library, but at least the curriculum and things like that.
We are doing welding in my library.
Is that right? I have to come up and see that. But what I'm saying is that I understand what you need, and that you can't afford necessarily to pay the PVA, who is talking about they need the funds to be able to give you the data that to collect your taxes. So thank you very much for being here. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you.
Very good. Representative Bridges has a question.
Well, I agree with Representative Nemus on some things that, you know, the smaller communities with the lower tax base are really struggling and everything. But the larger communities, I mean, for Kenton County, what kind of reserves is your library sitting on?
We have a policy where we keep 3 months in reserve. I can't tell you exactly what's there now, but we try to keep 3 months reserve. And I'll give you an example as to why. Last year, this past fiscal year, we had our HVAC at our Erlanger branch, which is the busiest library in the state of Kentucky, was going bad. So we had them go up and look at it. The roof was also, we were having leaks. That was a little over $500,000. Now, I have two options there. One is I can go get a loan, which means I'm paying interest, and spending more taxpayer dollars, or I can have some reserve sitting there so that when those things happen, I can pay for them, and in the long run, we're saving taxpayer money. And I think a good parallel to this is, in Northern Kentucky just recently, a city was talking about replacing a fire engine. They had just replaced a fire engine. Every time they replace a fire engine, the next year they start putting money into a reserve account, so that the next time the fire engine needs to be replaced, the money is sitting there. And so I think libraries are doing our best to be efficient, and to have money available when those needs arise. You know, we're very technology driven. So when computers go, when a server goes, we have to pay to replace it. And we usually can't wait if a server dies. You know, you have to replace that server. So.
Well, I'm just looking here, and I see you had a carryover from last year, a little over $10 million. Does that sound
That would have
correct?
been at the end of, probably at the end of June, the end of the fiscal year. And you have to remember how libraries are funded and how SPGEs are funded. Most of our money comes in September, October, November. So from, October, November, December. So January through the next September, we're living off what we raised mostly for those 3 months. So depending on when you look at our budget, it will be higher or lower. We do have reserves, yes. And I think some counties have larger reserves than others. We have several projects that we have in line that we've been working on and planning for and saving for. One is our oldest branch. We're going to be doing some remodeling on. We have a need for a new outreach vehicle, and then we have that policy where we're carrying over 3 months of our revenue as an official reserve.
Okay, and what would 3 months of revenue be, just
For
ballpark?
us, our budget is about $14.5 million, so you're talking about $1.2 million per month.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Very good. I got a couple real quick hitting questions, and then we'll get to our fire department right after you guys. Could you get us a list? I know I'm the third person to mention this. The list of the 12 or so libraries that you think are in danger of state aid if they don't get that. If you could get our committee that would be great to know. The next is if you could let us know what is the fee that the libraries pay to the county clerks and the sheriffs. Is that a standard fee across the board, or how is that set per county or per district?
I believe it's set per county.
Would it be possible to get that fee structure for the counties possibly to us over time?
We'll certainly work on that.
I mean, if it's a big undertaking, obviously don't dig into it.
I know we're paying, I think, 4%, and I
Okay.
think for one, we're paying 4.5%.
I think just some kind of report back to us to let us know kind of what that average is, so we would know. by the end of the interim would be great. And then the final question is, you mentioned the 20 hours of CE of continuing education. When was that put in statute, and do you think that that is still necessary, or do you think that, is that something you do locally, or do you think that's something you could do within your library to still be efficient at that? Or how, I guess the question I'm trying to get at is, just for you guys, how much cost, how much time is involved in continuing education, and is that necessary for every employee?
I know I've been working at the Kenton County Library since 1986, and I know it was in place then.
Was it?
It has evolved over the years, and we can do in-house training as well.
Okay.
So, for instance, when we have staff day, there are multiple training sessions that everyone participates in, which counts towards that.
Right.
We are proposing the State Archives and Records Commission, which has a new name that I can't think of at the moment, is presenting some new regulations to change some of those CE requirements. So I think that is in the works.
Okay.
To make it easier for us to meet those goals at a cheaper cost.
Right, okay, very good. And Senator Harper Angel's online. She has a question for you. Senator?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. You actually asked my question about the fee to the county clerk and the sheriff, but I'd also like to know how that fee was calculated and how long it's been in existence.
Very good. Okay. If y'all could report back to us, like I said, our report to the LRC is due in December, so just you have a couple months to get information back to Ms. Hayes. Well, thank y'all so much for your input, and if you want to hang on here, just in case there's questions here at the end. Our final presenter is all online, so we'll pull him up. Hopefully he's still hanging on there. Chief Adam Jones, are you online?
Yes, sir, I am. Thank you very much for having me.
Thank you. Thank you for your persistence and hanging on here. We got 15 or 20 minutes, so if you could do maybe 10 or 12 minutes where we have a few minutes at the end to ask questions, that would be awesome.
I will get through real quick, and I've got some stuff. In fact, the library board really helped because we kind of work on the same principle using the tax rolls. And I'll take a side note and applaud Oldham County's library. I'm an Oldham County resident. I got 2 elementary age kids. Appreciated the help tremendously since they've been homeschooled and MPI'd since March of this year with COVID going on. So really thank the services they've done. And I'll also echo what they said about the PVA and feeling the pain that they experience with increased cost, with limited revenues, continue to have increasing regulation, training. All of our members, firefighters, are required 100 hours a year of continuing education put on as a professional firefighter through the Fire Commission. And we continue to battle those increased costs with very limited revenue. In fact, our tax rate is capped at 10 cents per hundred, which was established in 1944 by statute KRS 75. And it was really established at that point in time, if you can go all the way back to then, as volunteer-only fire departments. The problem is continue to increase our services over the time. Just an increase nationwide from 2008 to 2018 is about 65% increase in volume. A lot of times people talk about our fires have gone down, or fires have gone down, but our medical calls and other services have increasingly increased. And like I will echo what they said. We continue to have the same administrative increased cost, health insurance, training, not to mention the pension. CRS is a continuing increase of 12% per year, and it continues to be absorbed within those strapped budgets that were established on that 10 cents cap. Like I stated, we collect kind of the same principle as the library board. Those tax rolls come in. That is the limited time that we do seek assistance from PVA. They provide us those uncertified tax numbers, and then turn around and provide those certified tax rolls for us to build budgets on. Continue to ask, and once again, I hate to keep stealing the slides from the library board, but it's kind of the same thing. We're asking to tax other small agencies that are by statute put out there to provide services instead of back and put an undue burden on us. We don't have a way to increase revenue. Almost 100% of all of our revenue is done through there. Some small revenue that my small district does do RV inspections for the State Fire Marshal's Office. That's a set $60 fee. And once again, that's set by statute, and I think we generated about $500 last year from those services. So it's very limited additional revenues for us outside that tax base itself. And, you know, just the PVA's strain is the same strain we're all feeling when it comes to this. And in fact, in Jefferson County, I know the PVA did not do reassessments this year. One of the districts I represent, they projected that's about a $350,000 loss in their budget this year without that reassessment being done. So that pain and their shortfall from that trickles down to all the SPGEs. And it affects us when reassessments are delayed or anything else with COVID restrictions and everything going on. So it continues to get to that. And the bottom line is we simply can't afford these increased revenues or increased cost without increased revenue and the tax cap that exists for our current situation as an SPGE. And we continue to absorb other administrative and operational costs. And districts now are starting to face issues where they're starting to limit services. They're having to look at laying off staff or reduce services back into the community. And it's really a conflict in public safety itself. When we have increased volume and increased need in our communities as they continue to grow, we're having to cut services back out to those communities because of that limited revenue. Like I stated, taxing a public agency right now without a way for us to increase revenue is just a problem. And I don't know that I have the answer of how to do that. I think the fire service would more than willing to be able to support legislation to once again support the PVA as Nina said, it's an unfunded mandate put on them to produce stuff for revenue. And it just creates an undue burden on the other SPGEs that don't have the ability to then increase that revenue to cover that cost. As Chapter 75 districts are capped, I know not all SPGEs are, but the fire districts are capped at that rate.
Very good. Does any of our members of our committee have any questions for the chief this time? Representative Bridges has a couple questions here. He said one, but I said a couple. So.
Hey, thank you, Chairman. Appreciate you being here and testifying before us. You had mentioned a PVA that was not able to get their all their assessments done and they left money on the table. Can you refresh that for me?
So we met with Jefferson County PVA. In fact, they sat in on our Chiefs meeting a couple weeks ago, and just because of COVID restrictions and issues throughout Jefferson County and the current climate in Jefferson County, they did not do their zone of reassessments this year. Now, what they've assured is they're going to catch up into two assessment zones next year. But really, what that means for every SPGE, when that assessment wasn't done, that increase did not go into place this year based on that 10 cents per hundred or whatever that rate's at. So for that one particular district, it was a loss of a $350,000 budget increase this year, even though their cost went up without any revenue increase because that assessment wasn't done. And really that's lost table on the money. That's lost money on the table. It won't be back next year. They will maybe get that increase next year, but they still lost the revenue for the current or the next fiscal year.
Right. That's what I thought. So, but I guess my thing, we're just assessing this right now. No decision's been made, as Senator Mills has said and everything. But we go back to the question that resonates with me is if the PVAs who do the actual assessing cannot get the full assessments done, we're leaving money on the table. And if we could bring more money back to the table, then what small amount might possibly be charged to the special taxing districts would be made up in increased revenue because of the volume would go up to offset that. If you sort of see what I'm saying, because and I don't know, but I'm just it's just sharing that thought of part of that, because it's I don't think we're out to take away anything from anyone, but sometimes it's sort of the old saying, you got to spend money to make money. And sometimes that works in this way, because if we can't fully assess the property, we don't get the full evaluations now. There is literally, we've already had one PVA that said due to their limitations, were not able, if I'm correct, could not even touch their commercial property for that year. So, I mean, there was literally hundreds of thousands of dollars left on the table there. So that's what we're trying to look at, is how to get this where we can generate, more money for all, but just wanted to see, and,
I understand, and I think it's a very complex issue, and I think the things, and to speak of my district, I've got a very urbanized district that borders the city of Louisville. I had an assessment 3 years ago, and 60% of my properties actually went down in value during that reassessment. So it's my cost didn't go down. My cost went up the same as everybody else, but because of the area in which we protect, a lot of those properties become dilapidated. Their property values actually drop. So any increased cost back alone maybe isn't even covered when those property values do go down.
Mr. Powell had some insight on maybe your answer.
Well, I just wanted to clarify, because the Jefferson County PVA is absolutely listening right now. And I spoke with her yesterday, and Ms. Younger does a wonderful job. What happened is she received approval by the Department of Revenue to she reorganized that 4-year structure. So instead of doing a quarter each year, she's going to do half next year. Now, I do want to point out, there was no deficit here. It just didn't go up as much as it usually does. It absolutely went up this year. There was no loss on that. She included all new construction, all new property, all new transfers. She just didn't do her quarterly assessing for this year. She got approval by DOR to reorganize her 4-year plan to do half of it next year.
Very good. Okay. Any other questions? We're right at our time here. I would, if you want to, if we've tasked y'all, the libraries, with the information, or if you have something that pops up in your mind that you wanted to share and you forgot to share, or whatever, feel free to pop Ms. Hayes an email, and she'll share it amongst the committee, and we will be putting all this together in our findings and everything in November and December. So I think this is a very productive meeting. I think we've covered, we've talked about some of the same things we talked about in our last couple meetings, but I think we've covered a little bit of new information as well. So thank you all for traveling here. Thank you, legislators, and those folks online. So be careful going home. We have a motion to adjourn. We are adjourned. Thank you.